Let's go through some of the grades here for the Michigan's position groups, and I'll start right away with the Michigan defensive line, grade A through F.
I'm gonna give him a B plus. I
You're harder on that. I give him an A minus
I think overall they actually are better, like top to bottom, than they were last year, which is crazy to say.
because they had two first rounders basically.
Right. But inside, they're much more stout, right? Chris Jenkins has come along. Mozzie Smith's taken that next step. They got Mason Graham that they can switch in there. They got
Yabioki.
Yabi on the edge. Taylor Upshaw, who I know people are like, man, Upshaw can't rush the passer. I'm like, they're not asking him to rush the passer. He's just solid, right? Jalen Harrell knows what he's doing and solid.
Michael Barrett, I don't know if you count him as an
more
linebacker.
Yeah, but and then Mike Morris has probably been arguably their best defensive player. There's a couple guys that could probably argue, but they've got guys they can rotate up front. Rashawn Benny has been good in spots.
I've seen Kenneth Grant come in a few times too. So
Kenneth Grant. So they've got guys up there that can come in. You're not worried about it when they sub somebody out. Like we're not that far removed from having Jess Spate play defensive tackle and crying every time he came in, just absolutely crying every time he came in because you knew it was going to be a 10-yard gain, right? So we're not that far away from that, and now there's stuff being built up there. All right,
we talk about nostalgia. Jess Spate is the nostalgia. Wilton's little brother.
God bless.
I think Wilton Spate might have played better defensive tackle than Jess.
God bless Jess, but he wasn't.
He stuck around. Good for him.
He was outmatched, right? He was obviously outmatched. So
because he could have went and done something in Eastern Michigan, but no, he stuck around. Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. I think he was a great program guy, but we shouldn't have had to play him. That's my point, right? You shouldn't have had to play those guys in big snaps, right? And he got better. He got to a point.
Well, that's why we go back to like guys that aren't even seeing the field, like special teamers now, like Julius Welshoff.
Right.
Like he played all the time in those years.
Right. He played a lot last year. Right. So it's like you're getting freshmen and sophomores that are getting that next
students
step.
That have experience with this defense.
Exactly. And then you can get out to the edges a little more, and you're rotating guys. Derek Moore is playing more and more.
Derek Moore's played well, yeah.
So you have a top to bottom. They are better than they were last year. They just don't have a number 2 overall.
They don't have the stud. That's why you can't give them an A, right? They don't have the studs.
That's to me, yeah. That's why I'm not giving him an A. I think Mike Morris is pretty darn close to that, though.
Yabioki keeps getting better.
Yeah, I think they're pretty darn close to that. It's just not. I'm not giving them an A. I'm giving them a B plus.
Linebackers, I'm giving them a B minus. I feel like they look lost sometimes.
C plus.
Okay. I think this is by far the worst part. This is the biggest weakness, I think, on the whole roster.
I would agree for the most part. Here's the thing. They are getting better. So I think this past week might have been their best game.
If they get Nikai Hill-Green back, we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. And I think they're missing him for sure. But this was Mike Barrett's best game, I would say, this past week. And it was probably Junior Colson's best game. Now, limited opportunity. Penn State didn't run that many plays. So that's part of it, right? But they are really good for the most part against the run. They struggle with the pass, and it's not really man-to-man. They're pretty good. It's more in the zone coverage, spot dropping stuff. Colson really kind of struggles with it. And you know what? I mean, that's
the Kalel Moling spy in the other game was like that. I mean, I know that was pretty much that was just defensive coordinator doing his job, man. But that was a great job by Kalel Molings to spy on Clifford.
Molings. It sucks that it would be nice if they just had one more guy who was like even just at like Mike Barrett level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pretty solid, nothing spectacular. Does some things really well. Like Mike Barrett's a great blitzer. And he's athletic, he's fast, and he's athletic, so he can cover tight ends and some running backs and stuff like that, right? So you don't have to worry about him being completely physically, outran or anything like that, right? Colson is athletic, probably faster than Mike Barrett, and he's big, right? So he's the perfect linebacker. He's just got to figure out what he's doing. They just don't have anybody like Kalel Mullings is. I mean,
you can't really count. Do you count Jalen Harrell as that linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a hybrid, but he's still the end. He's a drop end, I would say. So. They're
more linebacker last year.
Yeah, he played a little bit more linebacker last year, but I think he's an end. He's definitely an edge. They're obviously trying to work Jimmy Rolder in just because I don't think they trust Khalil Mullings with much right now because he's
Yeah.
been pretty rough for the most part. So I would agree. I mean, they're only going 2.5 deep right now at backer. In fact, they're lifting backers. They're playing a lot more dime this year. They're lifting a linebacker for an RJ Moten or for
They're doing a lot of three safety. Makari Page is out there, yeah.
yeah, they're lifting a linebacker for an extra safety and just keeping Junior Colson out there as the only linebacker, right? One, because teams are spreading them out and they want more speed on the field, and two, because those safeties are really good tacklers, so that's part of it. And then three, they don't trust the linebacker core at all, which is, yeah, that's why that Hill Green injury. That's my biggest worry.
Yeah, you obviously assume that with experience, Hill Green's improved because I remember watching Hill Green last year. And it's like, okay, what the crap are you doing?
Yep, but he got better as the year went on. He certainly
Yeah.
got. It would just be nice if you had even just like one more year of even just like Josh Ross. Like that would
Oh,
have been
good
great.
grief, that would be huge.
That would
Yeah.
have been great, right? Because I know everybody complained about Josh Ross because like he was kind of a.
He knew the defense though, man. He
But
had
he
that
knew what he
defense.
was
He was
doing. And
very meticulous.
you just need somebody. You need that. You need somebody who's just solid right now on this linebacking core, and they don't have that right now. And Colson will get there, right? Colson, when he gets there, he could be all American level because of how talented he is. But yeah, they're just kind of they're not quite there yet, and they have flashes, but then it's like, wow, great play, and then like the next 3 plays, you're like, what are you doing? So it's just like one step forward, 2 steps back a lot with them right now, but that's where you're at when you're playing a converted safety / running back at linebacker, and
Yep.
Will Mullings, who they're trying, basically they probably would prefer if he was a running back at this point. And
Now they're too deep at running back. We're seeing
right,
CJ Stokes and Isaiah
yeah,
Gaskin play.
now he's not going to play running back, obviously. And then also, Junior Colson, who's a sophomore, true sophomore, who just hasn't played a lot. So that's where they're at. So C+ with certainly room to go up. I don't think it's a lost cause. I just think it's
No, you don't want to. It's hard to give anything like a straight A. Like that pretty much means perfection all the way around. Like, and that's why I'm going to go to the secondary here. I think there's lots of people that could say A, but I'm going to say A minus just because I think mental errors from, let's say, Mike Sainer still obviously he's still learning a new position. This is a little bit different for him.
Sainer still has been really good though. I mean,
overall, he has. I mean, he gave a big play to Iowa, and that was kind of a mental error.
Fell. I think it was
and DJ Turner gets a little bit handsy, I think, on defense. He gets called for pass interference a little bit too much. But Jamon Green, easily, I think, the best player in that secondary. And we talked about the 3 rotation safety group with Makari Page and Rod Moore and RJ Moten. But like Will Johnson's been pretty good in his limited time. I know they're going to just try to work him in when they can. And he actually got more playing time when Jamon Green went down for a minute there.
Yep.
But I like what I've seen so far. I just think there's a couple, mental errors that could be cleaned up.
I would say it's an A- as well. I mean, B+ to A- somewhere in there. No real complaints about the corners. Yeah, I mean they have to pick one to pick on, right? They obviously don't like to pick on Jamon Green this year for whatever reason. And that's probably just I don't think that's necessarily because DJ Turner is the guy they want to pick on. I think it's just because Jamon Green's been that good this year. And then DJ Turner, yeah, I mean he's given us a little bit, but he really hadn't given up that much. Yeah, he got a little handsy a couple times against Indiana. But
some real easy interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but that's why they don't play receiver.
Mike Sainer still.
Right. There you go. And then Sainer still, talk about him. I mean, he's been exactly what they need as a nickel player. He defends the edge. He tackles.
How fast he picked it up. Let's just say that. I'm not gonna slight him.
They recruited him as a DB too. He played a lot of DB in high school, but yeah, it's not the same. I agree. But he's physical and he can cover anybody. I mean, he's quick and fast enough to cover anybody out there. And then yeah, they're working in Will Johnson. Will Johnson, from a talent standpoint, is probably the most talented guy out there. He's a freshman, so they're still working with him. He's getting better. The 3 safeties I think have been all pretty much awesome. Makari Page has been great this year. he's gotten just strong enough now where he can physically, I think, take the beating that coming down and playing safety requires. I mean, overall, yeah, no real complaints, and I think they're probably deeper than they're even letting on. They got a lot of true freshmen that I really like that they just haven't been able to play, and I think they'll probably. I don't know if you'll see those guys get worked in, but like a Quentin Johnson who played a lot this past week, you might see more of that. I think they're just trying to make sure they get as many
Even
guys.
Jaden McBurrows when he decides to come back.
Right. I mean, you get as many guys viable back there as possible because you never know with an injury, especially with the bye week coming up. You might be able to get some of these guys back, which is good. So overall, I mean, I think it's the strength. I think the front 4 or 5 or whatever, and the back end are a strength, and it protects some
this
of the
is in the middle, yeah.
of the linebackers, and just maybe it will allow them to just keep getting better and better. So it's a good defense. It's not a flashy defense though at all.
I would say overall though, you really probably give it like a 90%, which kind of sits right in that B plus A- spot.
88 to 90%. I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, really, they only gave up 10 points last week too, against Penn State. They gave up 10 points to Indiana. They have a shutout against an overmatched UConn team. The only game where you're like, man, that wasn't that great was Maryland, and they were put in some bad spots by the offense that game, right? And they completely shut them down in the second half too. So, and that was probably the best offense they played, right? And they really only gave up really like 17 real points in that game. So
to me, that's the best offense they played. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not. I mean, I don't have complaints. I mean, they've dominated the teams they should dominate, and they've held up against the run against teams that wanted to run the ball, like Penn State and Iowa, and they have everything you would want, other than maybe one more really good linebacker.
Teams: the Brad Robbins, Jake Moody, AJ Hennings, Greg Tarr / William Wagners of the world, and Joey Velasquez's and Julius Welshoff's and German Greens.
Special teams overall, I'm giving an A. I mean, I got no complaints.
Brad Robbins is already considered one of the best punters, and then Jake Moody's already one of the best kickers. AJ Henning feels like a guy that can just break it anytime he touches it. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like the coverage is just quick down there. So there's a lot of guys that
we haven't given up a big return,
and we're without Caden Colstar.
Yep, and William Wagner.
And Wagner's out too. That's
they're
weird
both
to
out.
Lose a long snapper, but Greg Tarr's doing a great job.
They both got hurt on the same play, out for the season, both of them, which stinks. But yeah, I mean, no complaints at all. I mean, you can't. I mean, Moody missed the one field goal. I think he might have missed 2 this year. One was really long. I think he kicked like a 58-yarder that he missed. I'm not counting that. He's made all his extra points.
He had one blocked, right? They had one blocked.
Yeah, they had one blocked, and then he pulled one too. Been great on kickoff. The punting, I mean, Brad Robbins didn't punt last week at all, which is great job, Brad. Good job. Good day's work. Just hanging out.
He appreciates it.
Hanging out there. He's a holder too. He's the holder too. So
he does a great job. Holder of the year, like Garrett Morris.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can complain about the special teams. They haven't given up a big kick return. They came close this past week, and then Jake Moody became a linebacker.
Yeah, that was awesome. I saw that. I was like, and he was confident on that.
Oh, he started getting up and he was trash talking after he made it. It was hilarious because that is Penn State's best offensive player that he just took down. So, yeah, overall, I mean, you can't complain. They've been really, really, really good on special teams for about 4 or 5 years running.
All right, how about the Fighting Jaden Denegals, the quarterbacks?
B plus. I got no complaints for the most part. Yeah, there's always. I'm not going to give him an A because there's things that can be better. But he's only thrown 2 interceptions. I guess we can look at it from a whole, but it's mostly J.J. McCarthy. He's only thrown a couple interceptions. The one last week was a fluke. The one before that, I'm cool with him taking a shot to Ronnie Bell there. The linebackers made a great play. He's the most efficient passer in college football. I mean, you can't really knock anything there. I mean, yes, sure, a lot of it's been on some short stuff, but he's accurate. I hate when some people are like, oh, they aren't playing any good pass defenses or whatever, so that's why he's so accurate. You think other teams don't play bad teams too? Like that, every team plays bad teams.
That's such a lazy take.
It's a lazy take. It is 100%. If you wanted to knock him when he ripped apart Hawaii, then fine, right? But he's pretty much done everything you could ask of him and more, probably. He's got his moments still where you're like, man, like the weird, crazy.
We saw the Jim Harbaugh reaction on the sideline where they got lucky with the Blake Corum catch.
Yeah, shaking his head like, I don't know if I can. We can't be doing that. But
we caught it, but no.
Yeah, we're not doing that ever again. But and so he'll have those moments, right? But it's for the most part, it's worked out.
Yeah, let's shake him off now too.
Right, and he brings the element in the running game, and even when he's not carrying the ball, teams have to respect him. Mm-hmm. So suddenly you've got all this other open space for both the throws, right, and for Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards to get theirs. And with those two guys plus this offensive line that we have, if McCarthy's able to continue to keep teams honest, I mean, it changes the equation for that a lot. That's what they didn't have last year with Cade McNamara. One, with McCarthy's ability to throw the ball downfield, they have to respect it. So these teams are playing Roman Wilson in the parking lot right now because they're worried that McCarthy's going to take it, hit him over the head, right? And that's opening up run lanes for Edwards and Corum. So, I'm going to give him a B plus. You would have liked to see maybe a little bit more out of, like, obviously Cade's been hurt, but it would have been nice to maybe him not be hurt and him show some stuff still where he's still that efficient quarterback that he had been. But
news is, I think he after losing that job, he got the yips. Now he's like, okay, I can still be that quarterback. I think he had the yips early on. I think now coming back from this injury not only feels like a mental break for him, where it doesn't feel like there's that pressure to have this job, because now he knows it's JJ's job. He's had time to process it, time to work through it, and just he's going to come back, I think, just poised to do his job if it ever comes down to it.
Right, and you know what? He's an extremely important part of this team because guess what? He's one play away all the time, right? And he's important because he's a team captain, right? And he's important, and the chemistry on this team has never been in question. So to me, what that tells me is that he's still doing his job as a team captain, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's not thrilled about losing the job, right? But guess what? He is still important. Like he's got to know that, like, look, he's still got to be confident, and he's still got to be, the team's also got to understand, like, we still have to have him ready. He's still got to be ready when he comes back from the injury. Hopefully, it sounds like he was out there throwing the ball around pregame this past week, so it sounds like there might be a good chance by Michigan State he's ready to go. So that's going to be important because, again, you never want JJ to get hurt because he does change the offense, and I think he's the biggest piece to kind of get to that next level. But I mean, if you got to go with Cade, I mean, you'd rather go with Cade than a guy who has not played at all before, in a big game.
Yep. The running backs here, I'm giving them an A. It's maybe you go like a 96% A, just with CJ Stokes had the fumbles for a minute there. So it's like, okay, obviously not perfect. But yeah. CJ Stokes is also your running back 3 / at the beginning of the season, he was probably 4 because I think they really thought Tavir Dunlap was probably 3 at the beginning. But then obviously what Blake Corum has done, worked his way probably into top 5 conversation for Heisman. And then Donovan Edwards just, being that guy. I mean, he was out for 2 games, but just really feels like the Lightning, they have this thing humming right now. And I'm liking what I see every time they get the ball. There's a strength and weakness, and I think I brought it up in our group chat where it's like, Blake Corum just has that, just keep going, constant, like, and then you have Donovan Edwards who finds that one cut, sticks with it, just goes. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be that quick slide in. I mean, there's a lot of Blake Corum's game that's like, wow, I feel like I've watched Barry Sanders replays like this.
Yeah, he's got the jump cut. He's making a lot out of nothing somehow. Mm-hmm. Which it's kind of different. So last year, Hassan Haskins made a lot out of nothing by just running people over and falling forward all the time. And Blake Corum has shown a good amount of that this year, the strength, right? And like
center of gravity really helps, right? I mean,
right, yeah. I mean, and he could probably squat an F-150. So
yeah,
um,
looks like it.
he's very strong, but he's more of the quick side to side, and he's got the breakaway speed. He's got the explosive speed in the open field. Don't get me wrong, but he is he gets it done in the tight spaces with his quickness and his elusiveness. Well, I agree. Donovan Edwards he's bigger, probably not stronger. He's definitely not stronger, but he's bigger. And he's got more of that, put foot in the ground, one cut, get upfield with and use his speed type guy. Like a one cut runner versus Blake. But yeah, I mean, I'm giving him an A. I mean, you can't. Yes, you can knock Stokes' fumble, and that will really hurt in that game, right? But I mean, since then, up until this past week, Stokes didn't touch the ball again, right? So he got 4 carries Saturday.
You see that a little bit of a punishment after that.
But like, I think it was a punishment, and it's like, well, we got 2. You don't need 3 when it comes down to in real games, right? You don't need 3.
Just saying, yeah. Even if like Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards get like raptured, and then you're still not mad that like, oh, we still have CJ Stokes, and we still have Tavir Dunlap, and we still have Leon Franklin, and we still have Isaiah Gash, and we still have Danny Hughes, and like you can go all the way back.
Well, I mean, a lot of it goes to the offensive line, which we'll grade in a minute here, but yeah, I mean, you've got one guy's a Heisman finalist. His or probably a Heisman finalist if it ended today.
The other one's probably one of the best receivers on the team, but still a running back.
Correct. And his numbers, Corum's numbers, pretty much exactly mirror Derrick Henry's numbers.
Mark Ingram's. Yeah.
His numbers are almost exactly the same as Derrick Henry's at this point in Derrick Henry's Heisman season, except Corum has 1 more touchdown. Like the yards, I'm pretty sure are the exact same as they were when Derrick Henry won the Heisman. So
he's at least pacing for a conversation. People are constantly bringing up the Cam Brown argument that Cam Brown has more yardage.
I don't care.
Yeah, I know. Right? These touchdowns mattered too, and it seems like he's relentlessly pursuing the end zone every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, he's got 13 touchdowns. So and he's on pace for almost 1,800 rushing yards.
But so did Khalid Hill that one year. He had like 13 runs.
Sure, but he also only had like 20 yards rushing.
It was like the year the Lions had Joseph Fourier, and Fourier had like 12 catches and 7 of them were touchdowns. Classics.
Yeah. I mean, cool, but not the same. But,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I know what you mean, man.
It's a two-headed monster now, too. I mean, you feel pretty good about some games. Donovan Edwards might not have as big of an impact as he did last week, right? It's not always going to work out where they're both going for 150 plus, right? That was kind of an anomaly game, I would even say. But yeah, Edwards is bringing you so much from a receiving game standpoint.
We talked about how last year Corum and Haskins were thunder and lightning. Now it's lightning and lightning. It's self-identified, self-claimed lightning and lightning.
And now they can play them both at the same time. You can they started to a decent amount too. They'll put Edwards in the slot or out wide and put Corum in the backfield at the same time. So it's a nice tandem to have. You don't really have to worry about getting to the third guy. And I like Stokes. I just think he's a year or 2 away. So you feel pretty good about it overall.
So wide receivers, I feel like I'm going to give it a low A-. There's enough drops to go around. I think every one of these guys have kind of contributed some drops. I think I talked about Ronnie Bell is having a great year, but he's due for 1 drop a game at least. Roman Wilson's had a couple. Cornelius Johnson had a big one a couple weeks ago. I wanted to see more from Andrew Anthony, but he's patiently waiting his turn. And I think when you have the receiving threat that we talked about with Donovan Edwards, it's going to take a little bit away, and obviously the underneath patterns to the tight ends, who will grade shortly as well. This is probably the most depth Michigan has had at the wide receiver position in a while. Since even Drew Dillio was like the 4th wide receiver. So I like this depth here. And obviously we talked about it last week in a podcast, like AJ Henning, he can be there if you want. Right now, Angelo Anthony should be your 4. Henning could be like your 5/6, and
yeah,
I don't know. What do you think on them?
I mean, I'm probably going to give him a B, and it's not probably B plus. I'll give him a B plus. They're blocking
a low B plus.
They're blocking like an 87. Their blocking has been superb. So
Mhm.
start with
That's a
that.
good
Part of
point.
like the long runs that these running backs are ripping off has a lot to do with them. So if it was just blocking, I'd give them an A plus probably. I mean, they've been awesome, right?
Yeah.
But there's some things. Yeah, there's been a few drops. I don't think drops have been necessarily like an epidemic of drops, right? Like this horrendously bad. But yeah, there's been a few drops, especially early. It's been better lately. Other than Cornelius Johnson had a big one last week. But I think overall, yeah, you want a little bit more, but I just think right now there's no dominant receiver out there. Ronnie Bell's the closest thing they have to that, right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of a hard position to grade because it's like, okay, um, you love what they bring to the table, but just the nature of the offense and the nature of some of these games they've played, they haven't been able to be featured as much, right? And that's just is what it is, right? What are you going to do at that point? I know they love Andrell Anthony and his talent, and I know they love, they like Cornelius Johnson and his talent. They love what Roman Well. They love some of the things that all these guys are doing, but there's only so many targets to go around when you have these two running backs and you have the offensive line and the
Yeah,
tight
the
ends.
offense doesn't circle around these guys. So
No, and it doesn't, and it shouldn't. It honestly should not, right?
Michigan has never been that. I at least it's probably Chad Henne and Braylon Edwards. I've really noticed
Yeah,
that.
but even then, it was like
There's
one
Mike Hart still.
receiver,
Yeah, it was still Mike Hart and
right?
Chris Perry.
And it was also one receiver, right?
Yeah.
He had a crazy great year, really 2 years, right? Junior and sophomore year, but like it was one guy, right? You don't, any, and I'm, this is a little bit of a segue rant, like a side thing, but like anybody who expects Michigan to play the game of football like USC or like Ohio State or like Tennessee or even Alabama, right, is crazy. That's not going to happen, nor should it, right? They needed to develop part of like getting back to the point where they seemingly are now, right? Where they're competing for the Big Ten championship every year and nationally every year is developing their own way to win games.
Yep.
Right? Everybody else wants to go and air it out and throw it 50, 60 times a game, right? And that's fine, right? We're not going to do that. That's just not what we're going to do, right?
Develop your own brand.
Right. And you know what? That doesn't mean like if you look at JJ McCarthy on a per pass or a per completion standpoint, he's up there with the best quarterbacks in the country, right? It's just some of these guys like CJ Stroud gets 40 attempts a game, right? So he gets inflated numbers. Hendon Hooker threw the ball like 55 times on Saturday, right? Yeah, close game. That's part of it too, right?
Do you see that when Hendon Hooker turned 18, JJ McCarthy was still 12?
12 years old.
That's so
really insane. Yeah, absurd.
Yeah.
Sophomore JJ McCarthy and Hendon Hooker is still in college is stupid. But that's just not going to happen. And people need to stop thinking it's going to happen. Sure, he'll probably have his days, but like the 300-yard passing day, like you're going to see him more go for on a big day, maybe like 30 or 40 for 320 yards, right? You're not going to see a 45.
McNamara like broke the record with like 346 or something. That's how
Devin Gardner has their top like 4.
Yeah, that's how little Michigan has ever thrown as a dynasty in all their years. They're just not that type of team.
Right. And nor would I expect them to.
Even when they had only one running back, Chris Perry, Mike Hart, those guys had like 30 carries a game. They used them up.
Why would you, first of all, with the running backs and the offensive line you have, right? You're in a niche now where it's like, okay, we know what we can recruit and develop. We are recruiting good offensive linemen, developing them. We're recruiting good running backs and developing them. We're getting some good receivers, but we aren't getting Marvin Harrison Jr., right? We're not getting We're not getting these like 5-star top of the line. If you get one, cool, right? They did a few years ago, right? And
Donovan Peoples-Jones, right? Yeah.
Donovan Peoples-Jones. And he had a good career. No one will ever say he had a bad Michigan career. Like he was certainly very highly impactful, right? But guess what?
Tariq Black was a 4-star at that time, but
Nico Collins was a 4-star. Like that was probably their best receiver group that they had brought in a while, right? And this one that they have here right now is probably overall top to bottom better, right? But they aren't going to be the team that's going to get these guys. Their 5th receiver isn't going to have 600 yards, right? And then you're seeing that on some of these teams, right? But guess what? A lot of times those teams aren't like USC is not built to win a playoff game, right? We saw what happened to Ohio State last year. They lost twice because they couldn't run the ball at all, right? This year you're seeing them. Stroud's numbers are really, really good, but they're not what they were last year quite to that point right? Because they're realizing, look, we got to control the line of scrimmage. We can't just be that finesse air raid team because it doesn't win you against the best teams. So
they've got to get 1-2 though with Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson, but
definitely. So it's they got to give them the ball. You can't throw the ball 60 times.
Yeah, that's why Jackson Smith and Jigba's numbers are also not.
He's also been hurt.
He's been hurt. Yeah. But yeah, so wide receivers pretty good. Let's go to tight ends. What do you think about the tight ends here?
I'll give him a B+.
You think they're missing Eric All a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, I do, but I do like their depth. I think they're deeper than I thought they would be.
I think no one expected Colston Loveland and Max Bredesen and Matthew Hibner to just be there.
Right, and then Joel Honigford's shown some. I mean, we know what he is.
We always knew he was a blocking type because he was an offensive lineman as a recruit.
Yep, but Schoonmaker's been really, really good, and he's probably shown more receiving this year than I thought he probably would. Probably due to Eric All being hurt. All was an NFL prospect, pretty top of the line in my opinion, one of the better tight ends in the country, fully healthy, and he just. Yeah, obviously it sucks that he's hurt, right? But Colston Loveland is the next one, in my opinion. And I like Hibner, and Bredesen as a walk-on has shown a lot, especially early in the year. So they like their group there. What I like is that the fact that they go 3 or 4 deep, so they can go into these big sets, but then they can also go 4 wide, and they can also, they can kind of do whatever they want, and it gives them a lot of flexibility. So I'm going to give them a B+ overall. I think they've
depth-wise, it's crazy. Really is. The fact that Carter Selzer probably starts at in Central Michigan and he's our number 7 tight end.
Yeah, he doesn't even play.
Yeah, it doesn't even touch the field. Maybe occasionally special teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's impressive. So depth-wise, yeah, I think I gotta give him A-, but I'm gonna say finishing with let's finish the offensive line as a whole. And I think this is the best group. Other than running back, I gave running backs 96% to 97%. It's I want to put offensive line at 97 to 98%. And I just think that's because even when Giovanni El-Hadi was playing, did a nice job. We've already seen Greg Crippen can be a good center. So if Olu ever does, God forbid, go out, you're not mad if Greg Crippen has to come in. He was supposed to be the starter initially until Olu transferred. And then you have Trente Jones and the fill-in with Carson Barnhart just doing a great job there. Keegan's better than he was last year. Hayes is taking a step up. Zinter's taking a step up. It's been really nice. So,
best offensive line in the country, in my opinion. Best one I've seen. I haven't seen a better one. And they've been that way for 2.5 years, I'd say. They've been pretty elite, right? So I got no complaints. They're an A. I mean, I'm not going to give anybody an A+, but they're an A, right? They're right there with the running backs, probably above the running backs just because they make the holes for the running backs. They're deep. It's shown because they've handled some injuries early on, right? So Keegan was in and out of the lineup. So El-Hadi was come in and play a lot. That's going to do, how good that's going to make that guy in a year or two? That's going to make him so much better. They were able to go deeper into the lineup too later in some of these early games. So a lot of those guys got a lot of
Reese Atterbury played. Even Jeffrey Percy got in there.
Percy played. He sucked, but he played. But even that, if you suck, it's fine at this point. If you're gonna suck, then you better suck now, right? Or they figure out what they have, and then they can get him. He can be passed by. Raheem Anderson played some even early on. They've got some guys that they've gotten a lot of playing time that they feel pretty good about. And then Carson Barnhart is pretty much like a 6th starter. I mean, he could play all across the line. You're not worried now that Trente Jones is out. And Trente Jones is coming along. He had some gaffes, I guess, in pass protection. But
if Jones is out for the year yet or no?
I think you're
it's a high ankle sprain. Sometimes that's
get him back for Ohio State. Just sit him down and get him back for Ohio State. Whether he starts or not, you just want him back just in case for that game.
I always thought that was probably the closest offensive line matchup, though, because we knew Carson Barnhart was He's experienced and played well every time he's come in, anywhere he's played, whether it was guard last year or tackle. So it's like, you're not mad that Trente Jones went down. Now, if we go down, Ryan Hayes goes down now, then we're going to be hurting a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, you can't really afford another injury right now, but it's we'll see. I mean, Keegan could probably get hurt again, and you've got El Hadi to slide in, but you don't want to keep doing that.
You don't want, and the way Olu's been playing, like, yeah, Crippen steps in. It's like it's a downgrade, but it's not a disaster.
It's a downgrade, though. It's a downgrade.
Yeah. I don't feel it'd be a disaster, though.
He's the best. He might be the best center in the country, so you can't fix that. But yeah, I mean, I got no complaints there. It's funny because every time they do something wrong or the defense just makes a good play, you find yourself like, oh, they messed it up front. It's like, how spoiled we are to where that just doesn't happen. Like there's hardly ever pressure on the quarterback, like real pressure. I mean, to where when it happens, it's just like an anomaly. It's like, oh, I mean, even last year, almost never, not until against Georgia, almost never was McNamara sacked or pressured. This year, I mean, McCarthy's been sacked. He got sacked once this past game, but he's been sacked a couple times. It might only be like 4 times. I'd be interested to look at it, but he has not been sacked very often. McNamara has been sacked this year.
And almost every time he's been in, almost every snap.
But McCarthy, part of that due to his mobility and able to escape, but they don't give up free rushers very often. So, and we are spoiled.